Okay. Now, bucks will bed in marsh grasses and in cattails, under deadfalls, whatever, where they may only have a visual of 2 or 3 feet because it's just a wall around them, but they're bedded. They're not up and they're not moving. When they're up and moving, they like to have some semblance of what's going on. And I told the guy, for a monster buck, which he had those in his area, to come into this food plot, he had a little opening where his tree was, where the deer were supposed to come into this, because it was totally blocked in otherwise with these tall weeds, which they would walk through the weeds, but most of them came through this opening. I said, the big bucks don't like being in here in the daytime. They don't have a visual. They can't see danger. And actually those weeds, even with the winds, those weeds are going to deflect the wind, because it was a wall of weeds. So if there's wind coming in from outside this food plot and it's hitting these weeds, it's going to deflect the wind and not come into the food plot. So not only can he not visually see, he can't smell anything. So he cut those weeds down so the deer would have a visual. I mean, he obviously had some more than bucks and does coming into it that didn't care, but a mature buck, that's a totally different type of deer. And then he started doing better. I actually picked out 2 trees. He said, when you leave, because he lived in Arizona. He works for the government. He works along the border patrol. And he said, when you leave, put a couple tacks in the 2 trees on this property that you would hunt. And I felt really good about it, because I put 2 tacks in 2 different trees. One was on a bench on the side of this hill, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, and they had a couple oaks on it. And then the other one was a tree that I knew once he cut these weeds all down, the deer, there was a ravine that fed up into this food plot. And there was a huge bedding area at the base of this ravine on a different bordering property. And I knew, because I could tell by the runways and stuff, the deer were coming up that ravine in the evening, because the thermals would be going down that ravine so they could smell any danger as they're coming up it. So I picked a tree on that ravine for an evening hunting, and his next 5 bucks killed on that property were out of those 2 trees, which
that's
really
awesome.
felt me. Yeah, I was pretty happy about that. And the one in the ravine was the one that he shot. He shot 3 out of the one in the ravine and 2 out of the one on the oak flat on the side of the hill.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because we've seen it happen where I had a buddy that bought a property, and it was basically just like a 10-acre wheat field. And he had a consultant, I believe, tell him that the reason bucks weren't using that wheat field as much is because there wasn't any screening cover around it. Like, they could basically stand in the timber and just check if there's does on the field visually. But I don't know if their eyesight works like that. I don't know if they can actually look on a 10-acre field and see absolutely everything or not. I'm like you, I'm not a land manager, so I have no idea, but I thought that was interesting.
What kind of field was it?
It was a wheat field, like a winter wheat field.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can see a long distance across an open field, obviously. So that's not, you're talking about looking into the timber beyond the wheat field? Or? No,
like they were standing in the timber. It was kind of a weird configuration. It wasn't just like a big block. It was like a T. Like, it had like different little contours in it.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so he was telling him like to put screening cover around all of it. That way, if a buck wants to check that field, he has to come through that screen to get the visibility to check it. And I don't know. I'm not a land manager, so I don't manipulate any land. Like, between Jake and I, there's not a single property we could go and like plant something, so I don't know, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. That is interesting. But if it's a big enough field, I mean, this was a small food plot I'm talking about. So he was like locked in. I can remember I was hunting in Iowa. By the way, I did kill a buck in Michigan last year. It was a little over mid 120s, 11 point.
Heck yeah.
I'll mention that in a second, but I remember in Iowa I was hunting, and it was on a point. So you had a point like this. This was all timber down in here. Big, huge ledge going down into cattail swamp. But this was all big field. I mean, probably a half a mile long by a half a mile long this way. And I sat in a corner tree on the tip of that point. And I had a decoy. I had Doreen. I call my decoy Doreen. Yeah. And I had her at 45 degrees out. So a deer coming from me into this field down here or the field over here could see it. could see this decoy. And it was really windy, and I'm sitting in this corner tree. It's an evening sit, and I looked around. I looked both directions. I saw a couple does over here, no big deal. And I was getting cold. So I opened up my thing, and I grabbed a couple adhesive body warmers, air activated body warmers, and I stuck them on my base garment. And then as I was pulling everything back up, because I was paying no attention to my decoy, which is 20 yards in front of me, as I'm starting to zip my thing up, I looked, just out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. There was like a 150-inch buck standing there with my doe decoy, and he picked up me zipping my coat back up. I'm looking at him, and he's staring right